Okay, perfect.
Alana, just a sec. I'll want to pause the live stream before we actually begin the meeting so we don't have double audio.
Mm.
Just one moment. Well, okay, good. Gonna say it looks like it's gonna take a sec. Okay, Alana, take it away.
Okay, perfect. So this is the Human Rights Commission Process Task Force on Monday, September 9th at 5 p.m. And we're going to start off with some introductions. I'll go first and we'll start with Zoom and then pass it to the room. I'm Ilana Lynn. I use they, them pronouns. I'm a member of the commission and chair of this task force. And I will pass it off to Kelsey.
Awesome. Hi, everyone. My name is Kelsey Murray. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm the vice chair of the commission, and I will popcorn to Hamadi.
I am Hamadi Jackson. I am the chair of the Human Rights Commission and a member of this task force, and I will pass it to, I don't know who else is on Zoom, Kira.
Hey everybody, this is Kira Pressy. I use she, her pronouns. I am a member of the commission and this task force, and I will popcorn to Joaquin.
Hey, thanks, Kira. Good afternoon. My name is Joaquin. I'm a member of the commission and this task force. Robert.
Hello, everybody. My name is Robert Marshall. I am a member of the commission and a member of this task force.
Very good. And my name is Gretchen Bennett, she, her pronouns, staff liaison.
Okay, great, guys. So we're going to kick it off with public comment. Have we received any, Gretchen?
We have not.
Okay, perfect. Moving right along then. So the consent calendar, approval of agenda and minutes. Do we have anyone opposed to the agenda or minutes? Any edits? Okay, great. I'm going to say that that is approved then. So on to consideration of questions raised, which I do foresee being the entirety of our meeting today.
Alana, I'm going to grab you back for a second, just because it's a process task force. I think I technically need to request a motion and a second to approve the consent calendar. So if you wouldn't mind.
Makes perfect sense. Do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the consent calendar as presented, including the agenda and the minutes from from our previous meeting.
Seconded.
And now I already caught that it was unanimous approval, so we're good. Thank you so much.
Got it. I'll keep that in mind next time. Okay, now moving on to considerations of questions raised, which I do foresee taking up a majority of our conversation. I think first, let's go through the events that we want to create, process and procedure, just to identify if there's anything missing from this list, and then we'll go into answering the questions.
If you'd like paper. You have the newest one from today.
Okay, so I think Gretchen did a great job assembling the items that we wanted to make a process and procedures for. So I do not have any items I would like to add. Is there anything that the group thinks should be added?
I'm certainly backseating to all of you, but if no one's bringing up anything here, I might wonder if this is where it might go to consider procedures to help all of the commissioners participate or welcome diverse perspectives. I know leadership in the past had been thinking about how do we help people who might think a little differently than what the idea is that's on the table to be comfortable to speak. So this might be where that gets parked. I'm not sure. You could have a procedure for kind of checking in with everyone, for example.
Yeah. Would that fall under like a decorum procedure maybe, or is that going too far?
Maybe, it might be. Not sure, it could really go, I defer to the group, yeah.
How are people feeling about a procedure for how we interact in unique situations and how to foster diverse feedback?
I think just having people have the option, or just pressing that if they feel that they want to say something and can't at the moment, that they approach leadership on the outside and say something. So that way we're not getting into that, I forget what it's called, but that continuous email chain that we were warned about. So I think that would be probably the best way to do it.
Currently, do we have any deadlines on when written comment has to be submitted by regarding the timelines of our meetings?
We do not, and so I'm in a routine of checking just before coming into the meetings.
Maybe we add like making an announcement about written public comment, and that if you have something that you were unable to share or that you just didn't want to share in this space, that it can be submitted through that process.
Yeah.
With that.
Yes, and I was also thinking about commissioners themselves, just in that prevention of groupthink. Like if 3 people express a similar perspective, maybe a 4th commissioner might become reluctant, and to help have a process. But I think the idea that was shared is a good one about making sure there's opportunity for everybody to comment, and welcoming people to reach out to the chair if necessary without breaking public meeting law. That could be it right there, but just recognizing that need for commissioners too.
Just to clarify, Gretchen, someone reaching out to Hamadi wouldn't be a breach of public meeting.
It would not, and it would help Hamadi be aware of that. What would be a breach is if Hamadi then called each member of the commission and tried to serial meeting.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay, so what that sounds like to me is that we need a rule around how commissioners engage with leadership, and like communications apart from meetings.
I've also noticed in the past, and correct me if I'm wrong, Gretchen, but a lot of folks email you.
That's true too.
A lot.
Yeah.
I know I do.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not for naught, but I always email you, and I don't really email somebody. I mean, I could, but nothing against somebody. I just, you're the one who often organizes the meetings, and
yeah.
I email you thoughts, and so I wonder if there's a way. I wonder if that's bad or good or not. I mean, it just is, but.
It's a great question. I know I don't mind it, but we could probably clarify in the process how that works too. Like with the person's permission, for example, if they had an idea, I could bring that up to the commission's leadership for inclusion at the next conversation, which is typical.
So it sounds like we need a communications procedure broadly, and that the subcategories of that need to be communications with Gretchen, with leadership. We should probably add one for the public, which is in our bylaws, but that way we can just, have it somewhere else. Okay, so public, commissioners, Gretchen, leadership. Is there any category I was missing from that?
I don't know if this would be worth it, but like public officials.
Ooh, yeah. Yeah, like other public yeah, I think that's great.
Say that again? How we, the commission, interact with public officials, or what do you mean by that, Kelsey?
Well, it sounds like we're kind of interested in creating like best practices around like how do we communicate like formally. Am I understanding what we're talking about?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so I think it would be helpful to have just like the best practices for how we're communicating with other like elected officials, local public figures, just so that way it's consistent across the various commissions, task forces, committees, etc. I think that's good. Okay, so we're definitely adding communications. Do we have any other topics that we feel like might be missing? And Gretchen, please jump in since you are the one who has the most experience with what commissioners might be missing.
Thank you.
Also, I love the do we get a gavel idea. I would very much like a gavel. A dainty one, of course, you know, not too extreme.
All of a sudden in my head I hear, look at the way that I swing this gavel. Very demure.
I'm not like other chairs. I'm cutesy. Sorry, internet trash brain. Okay. Do we want to move on to the questions? Do we want to continue pondering areas to add? We can always do questions and ponder.
I'm fine moving on to questions.
Okay, cool. We'll do that. And then if anything comes up as we're working through these questions, we can talk through that. Okay, so I'm just going to go down the list. Shall we use name cards at meetings and have a name-in convention on Zoom? Kelsey does a thumbs up. Kelsey is approving of that first question.
Yes.
Does anyone feel differently, or is this just a simple yes answer?
I think honestly, it's just a simple yes answer for me too. I mean, it's a way to ensure that the public that is attending the meeting knows who we are.
Okay, and then so for the naming convention on Zoom, what are we thinking? Are we thinking like just putting commissioner in front of our names to distinguish? Like it would be Commissioner Ilana Lynn. Do we think more needs to be done than that?
No, simple is best.
Agreed.
Okay, and does
Yeah.
everyone know how to change their Zoom, or should we add a procedure on that?
I think that's something people can research on their own if they don't know how to do it. I don't think this space needs to be a space to have a policy and procedure for changing someone's name in Zoom. I think a quick Google search would help those that might not necessarily know how to do it yet.
I think that's very fair.
I like the immediate change there. That was awesome.
And then I'm like, I'm on my iPad for the first time and I'm like, I don't know how to change my name.
Doing it on the phone or tablet, I don't know how that works.
Okay, perfect. It sounds like we've got number one answered. We will, so when do we want to make these changes? Like, should we start this at the next HRC meeting? Do we wait to have everything solved? How's everyone feeling about that?
I think we should give it at least one meeting so that way we can announce the changes first before we expect everyone to implement them.
Okay, I think that sounds fair.
If I could make a suggestion, I would say we wait till we have kind of all the things we want to implement and everything all rolled out and everything, and then roll it out all at once. I think if we, like roll out one thing and everything this meeting, and then we, come back at another HRC meeting, and then we implement something else, and then we implement something else, I think we just end up eating up a lot of time on the full HRC agenda, and I think it can also just get confusing for some people on like, well, when is X launching? When is Y launching? I think we, compile all of the new things that we want to implement and then just roll that out all at once. We can discuss anything further that needs to be discussed and then push out the hard date for implementation.
Agreed.
Yeah. Okay.
Also, these recommendations are just that.
Mhm.
for the commission to consider, and so we can't do anything until we've been consented to by the commission. This is a one adjacent.
Okay.
We had talked, I know it's not on the list, but we had talked previously about physically separating commissioners from members of the public. Not like a different room, you know what I'm saying. So I wonder what folks think about that in addition to the placards. I know that the mayor's office is not really conducive to that. Just because there's not a lot of space other than for the table. But there are alternatives when appropriate. It may not be an everyday and every meeting thing. It may be a special thing like we did during the ceasefire process. Recognize right away that space probably wasn't best. And we had that other meeting, we were in different space, which I think was better. But open question.
Yeah, Kelsey, take it away.
I'm wondering if like we have, and I think maybe we talked about this, we have like a formal / informal meeting like processes. So like when we have a formal meeting, which is like we are expecting large like amounts of guests, or there are special guests, or like what special circumstances. That's when we like enact those special like processes. So like having like a board or like a commissioner table with like the audience. But I think like with a more informal meeting, like most of our meetings, I think it's sort of like community building, and like also with an equity mindset of like if there's room at the table, like public, come on, come sit with us.
I agree, Kelsey, especially for a regular meeting. And I know this is a question to be discussed later, but it does relate to, well, when do we know to have a special meeting? For example, every relates back to April, but back in early April when we were doing the beginning or embarking on the ceasefire process, it was just an agenda item, which in theory could have been settled in one meeting, which and could have been. I mean, it could have been that no one had showed up to that meeting, and there would have been no public engagement, and it would have been a blip in everyone's consciousness. It ended up not being that way. So, I mean, we're getting ahead of ourselves, and I don't want to belabor it, but it relates to this conversation because it could be that, recognizing that something's been asked of us by city council, something very specific, a deliverable on a time frame like a resolution. Well, that'll always be a special meeting. And if no one shows up, no one shows up. That's never an agenda item for a regular meeting. I mean, things like that to entertain, but relates to that question.
Yeah, I think Kelsey's idea of having informal and formal meeting procedures will help with that. And I hear what you're saying about struggling to identify when formal is formal. And I think that that's like we will just have to proactively decide that anything that could be contentious will warrant a formal meeting. And if no one shows up, that's fine. And if people do, then we're prepared.
I think one metric we could use to determine whether or not something, triggers, that special meeting is if that topic or a similar topic has, generated, a significant amount of public comment at a city council meeting. So, if we take into, like, for example, using a different example than anything other than Gaza, but, the library budget cuts, if somehow the HRC found its way in the middle of library stuff, well, we know historically in the past, that's generated a lot of feedback and comments at a city council meeting. And so we could probably largely expect that it would generate a significant level of public comment at, an HRC meeting. And so like we could use that, kind of as a metric. Okay, well, is this received a level of public comment at a council meeting, and then it's getting handed over to the HRC to, evaluate further. Well, then it's likely that the public's going to have an interest. So.
Yeah, Kelsey, take it away.
Would this be possible for like for the chairs to meet with staff and the three of them decide? Like, would that be allowed? Like that would be cool.
I
Could
think
you say more?
with the commission's permission and understanding in advance that that's what we'll do, I don't see anything wrong with that. You know, we'll run everything that we're proposing by our legal department. I don't see anything wrong with that, and then we can just announce that, assuming the commission supports the idea.
Yeah, so maybe it's something like at the discretion of the chair, vice chair, and staff
Yeah.
to implement that. Because I know like we didn't get some like the public comment packets. They were like trickling in, and then it's like boom. So like it can be hard for like the group to get together and say, okay, we need a special meeting or like a formal meeting.
Oh, yeah, and I think it'd be advisable because right before that first meeting, the four of us convened just in case. And it wasn't as formal of a conversation as what kind of meeting are we having, but it was like, what rules are we going to implement or enforce that maybe we don't know otherwise enforce? And we, believe it or not, we did come up with something, and there was a tension with it going into that meeting. But I think that's a good idea, Kelsey.
Yeah, and I think we should add like criteria to the policies and procedures of what would deem like require in a formal meeting, such as advanced like or a multitude of public comment expected, or topic that has been contentious at other city meetings. Okay, do we feel good about this discussion and ready to move on to question 2? Okay.
Yes.
I'm gonna move on, and if we want to come back, we can. Shall we add photos and bios of the commissioners to the webpage? Any thoughts?
I think that's a solid yes. I think that in itself would help for when people are going on and looking at anything on the website to kind of know. But that I would also make that contingent, like you don't have to have your picture out there because some people might feel some kind of way about that. But if you would like to, then definitely go forward with that.
So everyone should have a bio, but photos are optional. Is that how we're feeling? Or are we feeling everything is optional and just like a name can be placed on the website if you do not want to share?
I think all optional. And do we have to have our names up there? Is that like
It's
a
already
city requirement?
I can ask if it's actually a requirement. It's certainly a protocol. We currently have the roster of the commission, your name, you know, when you were appointed, when your term ends up there now. We can, I can ask if that's optional, if the group would like me to.
Okay,
I think we should.
I might be in the minority here, but I mean, we are public officials, and I don't think we can get out of this one. I think maybe the picture maybe is optional, but your name is already out there, period. I mean, you're a public official. Welcome to the world. And I think the public has a right to know who is representing them on certain issues. And so I think a bio should be, my preference would be to have that be a part of it at least. 'Cause that's what you signed up for. I mean, that's your gig.
Yeah, and I think we should provide guidelines on what the bio should include, because I feel like people struggle sometimes to talk about themselves. It would just be like suggestions, but like include your educational background if it's relevant, include your lived experience, include why you're on this commission, like just some guiding questions to help people through the bio write-in process.
Kira, did you say something? I think you unmuted, but I don't know if you did or not.
Oh, I did. I was just gonna say that I second you on that. I think it's important. We are public officials. And I think, I mean, our name is already out there. It's been out there when we were appointed. So I think it's important that we put them on there. And then, I mean, I also would agree. I think a bio and a picture would be nice just because it's a way to connect with the community a little bit more so than we already do. So, I mean, I looked for that when I applied because I wanted to see who was on the commission and like, I mean, it's important, you know?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, we are definitely public figures. If somebody hasn't stopped you at Walmart yet, it's coming.
I get stopped all the time, Hamadi. It's ridiculous.
Perfect. So I think we're all in agreement on number 2 that we should run that by the commission. And once we finalize this process, and that we want to move forward with that suggestion. Okay, number 3, what can we say at the beginning of meetings that helps clarify when the public and guests speak? And so just a refresher for everyone, this question came out of a conversation where we were debating how to still have guest involvement of people who attend regularly, such as Linnell, and provides valuable insight, and how to distinguish that from public comment, to just have conversations be better facilitated by the commission.
I can just offer this one. I think again, there's a regular meeting versus a special meeting distinction here to be had. Always guests and members of the public speak at the discretion of the chair, and that's true now. I mean, I don't think that's not followed now. I think that is followed. For a more formal meeting or a special meeting or whatever you want to call it, what we did, what we have done is we've, I think, pretty clearly outlined what is going to happen. I made a special effort personally of really trying to remind people what was happening and what the outcomes were going to be, and I did that over and over and over again. And that still didn't always lead to, I think, the desired result. So I think it's an open question of what that looks like, but I think there has to be some enforcement conversation too. What does it look like when members of the public don't respect the rules of engagement? And that's not hypothetical. I mean, that happened again and again and again and again from everybody. So, or that's not fair, but from a lot of people. So I think that's also another question for me on this question.
See, the enforcement question leads me to disagree with the fact that we need to have it be formal and informal. I'm just afraid that if we keep separating it up into what's a formal rule and what's an informal rule, that we're going to just lead to very confused commissioners who don't know what situation's appropriate for what. I think that we should have a process at the beginning of each meeting which introduces guests and says that these people are invited guests of the commission and they are allowed to participate in conversation as they see fit, and that we have members of the public who, when time permits, they are able to participate in the discussion as well, and we will let them know when that time is available, and they are always welcome to submit public comment if they want. That would be my suggestion. I know that we like to be a lot more open and like let the public chime in. I just think that having wishy-washy rules defeats the purpose of having them.
So I appreciate that. My question for you, Ilana, would be, then who's a guest? I mean, how do we determine who a guest is?
Yeah, so guests.
There were several times where members of the public felt, because they said so, they felt that their voices didn't matter because other people were talking who weren't on the commission but were members of the public. And so then why have a guest?
Yeah, so
a curiosity question. I'm not challenging what you're saying.
Yeah, so my thinking with the whole guest distinction is that we do have those regular attenders like Linnell, who has become accustomed to the way that they interact with the commission, and I don't want to come in and disturb that. My personal preference would be that anyone who's not a commissioner is a member of the public, and we can share when they're allowed to chime in and when they aren't. I know that makes this process a lot, more formal. But I just think that having the distinction of commissioner and public will make everyone feel like they are treated in the appropriate manner. There's no favoritism being shown. But I also don't want to be the person who ruins the way that the commission is ran. And so I think that if we want to identify guests, that we have to, one, inform them that they are an invited guest, include that in the agenda and say invited guests, so-and-so person. And at the beginning of the meeting, we will have a little spiel that we come up with that says, these are the commissioners, these are our invited guests because they have relevant knowledge in X, Y, and Z area on our agenda. And public comment is at this time. And if we have time during these discussions, we will inform the public that they can chime in. I'm going to be quiet now for reactions.
I kind of like the way that we do things now with our regular meetings, because we do give people, we introduce ourselves, we give the public a chance to introduce themselves, so that distinction between commissioner and public is made. And then, we do invite people to participate in what we're doing. On the big things, like the Voldemort that we will not mention, it's that process. That was a little different situation because it was a lot of heated emotions. A lot of people wanted to speak, and it was a thing of enforcement, which we all did our best to maintain, but it did not go swimmingly. So I think that's more of where we should focus. As far as changing, how we do things now, I really like it where it's informal, because I feel like that gives people the comfortability to speak. Whereas when it's formal, we have, people will clam up and feel like they're more on the spot. Whereas when we're just conversing and going it that way, then it fosters more communication. That's just my 2 cents. So.
Yeah, I would agree with Hamadi. I think, I think, yeah, I'm just gonna stop there. I agree with Hamadi.
Okay, well then it sounds like we should do the formal and informal rules for how we engage with public then, is what it sounds like.
Well, yeah, I think framing it as formal and informal might not be, may not be the best way of thinking about it potentially. Maybe like regular versus special or something. It's not that we're throwing caution to the wind or in our monthly meetings. We do have a formality at some level.
Yeah,
we have structure.
Yeah,
we have rules.
every our monthly meetings are formal meetings.
Yeah, but I hope I'm not getting too semantic here, but into the weeds. But I think maybe it does matter because, we do have a way. We have rules and procedures that we're here trying to better, but that have served us well, actually, for the most part, every month.
It seems like
yeah, go ahead.
It seems like the main criteria we've discussed for what would condone formal and informal, not saying that those are the words, is attendance. So like when we expect a larger number of attendees is when these rules become more important.
Or when we're given a specific task, like for example, in the case of the resolution, if something like that were to come our way again on anything, I would be an advocate of saying, well, that's a special meeting. No one shows up, but we've been given a task by city council. We're going to treat it as a formal request, and we're going to treat it as a special meeting.
I like that as a trigger.
That's. I don't think it's just attendance, but I think that's an important one.
So special request or attendance will be what will trigger more, intense rules, we could say. Or
I would say more intense rules. I would just say an additional set of rules than what are traditionally followed. I think using words like more intense rules, just to me sounds pretty aggressive coming from a human rights commission. So, I think, it's also kind of where we also look at it, too, as we, talk about this, and once we start getting put into writing, I think, what does that language look like? Because you're using formal versus informal / regular versus special, right? Like saying formal versus informal makes it sound like what we do on a monthly basis and everything doesn't really matter. But, like using regular and special, so. But yeah, I wouldn't say more intense. I would just say anything, like triggers, like an additional set of rules, or we implement, additional policies and procedures to ensure the orderly function.
This is correction. I'm also curious if you all would be interested in entertaining the ability to pivot. So let's say we're surprised Like, I'd like to write
Never
in
surprised.
for your consideration, the opportunity to take a pause or a recess at the beginning of the meeting and quickly adjust. You know,
Absolutely.
chance to powwow with the chair, vice chair, and go, okay, we're switching, and that'll cause some thinking through of rooms and always having the name cards with, you know, all of the things that shift. We'll try to have that nimble. I feel like that would help us, because you just don't know. Sometimes you just don't know. Great.
Yeah, I agree. That should be standard practice. Like top of the procedures is like you can always call a recess and pivot.
Yeah.
Okay, so it sounds like we will create a set of rules for when these specific criterias are met for public comment and engagement. Does that sound like a good reflection of what we've discussed? Okay. So for number 4, shall we add a public comment time to the end of the agenda in addition to the time at the beginning? Madi did a thumbs up. Just informing everyone. I also think,
Oh no, that was a thumbs up for the last one. No.
Oh. Okay.
I think if we're gonna keep it, for better words, informal, if we're gonna keep the same flow that we've been with, I mean, I don't think there's any need to add the public comment at the end because we allow the public to chime in at any time for the most part. I think we could do that if we're, adding additional structure because of the, special meeting or whatnot that we're saying it is. I think that we could do it then.
I couldn't hear you very well, Kara. Did you say only for special meetings, not regular meetings? Is that what you said?
Yeah, sorry. Can you hear me better now?
Yeah, I don't think it's you. I think it's just my hearing aids.
Oh, okay. I think that this would really only be necessary for meetings that we're adding that additional structure. I don't think it's necessary if we're keeping the same kind of rhythm that we run the meetings with now, just because for the most part, the public is allowed to chime in at any time to have that conversation. So I don't think it's necessary.
That resonates with me. I also wonder if maybe it should be at the discretion of the chair and not something that is just predetermined. Because I think it's possible that people will count on having a second chance at a public comment, and it just maybe becomes a little uglier and more mean-spirited than it would otherwise be. And so, if we come to an allotted time and the chair or the commission determines that they would like more public comment from people who haven't spoken or from, whatever the case may be, then that might be something worth entertaining. But I think having it as a matter of course during special meetings that there's a second comment period, I think is probably not advisable. But
Yeah, and I feel like that's something we've also done in the past as well. Like this is what we have going on, and if we have more time later, then we can. But if not, we're gonna go forward. So I guess just really keeping that as implementation in special circumstances.
Cool. I agree with that. Just like add it as an option for a way to handle special meetings. And I'm just going to refer to them as special for now, and we will word shop it when we write the actual rules. Okay. Any more discussion on that question? Okay. So number 5, thinking back to the ceasefire topic, what do we want to do better next time? When did we wish we had a procedure? So I feel like this question has been addressed. I feel like that is what the procedures are that we have named above. But if anything else comes to mind, please let me know.
Well, I can speak to this one. So I think, Gretchen, this is from what I said at the last meeting, which is, I can think of a lot of things, but one of them is just what do we do when we're given a task? So the special meeting is, of course, one answer to that, but literally, what does it look like? So for example, just to invoke the example, we weren't really given rules or expectations around anything. And so, I think it would have been totally legitimate to have said, we can't act on this until we've been given more direction. Or, can you know what I mean? That would have, it would have scaffolded the conversation more. And in the absence of that, should we have a procedure of how to determine things like whether, because it was an open question at one point, whether it was going to be a resolution or a proclamation, or whether it was going to be a memo or something. I mean, how do we determine that, and what options are even available to us in terms of things that we, this might be a legal question, but things that we can even exercise in terms of recommendations. I think in SRC it just says broadly recommendations. Well, what does recommendations mean, and what forms does that take? And so, if there are processes that are in place that are meant to guide, maybe not dictate, because I think everything should be a little bit organic in terms of every situation is unique, I think would be helpful. So that's one thing. I see Kelsey's hand up.
Yeah, okay. I think that's good that we should add a rule or procedure on how to interact with requests from the city council and just the city council as a whole. Okay, Kelsey.
I'm going to preface a lot of things by saying, would it be too much? Would it be too much if we had like a form? So like, do you want the HRC's input? All right, what's the topic? What's the outcome you're looking for? Is that a resolution? Is that a memo? Is it just advice? And then we like have more information, because that was something that we just so wanted on the ceasefire stuff. We just got statement about Gaza. So maybe like having those prompts might help.
Yeah, I think that would make sense to do. Robert.
Yeah, I was just gonna agree with Commissioner Murray on that. I think having that information, what it exactly is that they want, a form would be helpful. I also think too, anything like including on there, anything like what is their expected timeline to have that completed. I think if we would have known anything like, hey, we had more time, or anything, it would have allowed us when we got the initial request to kick it back for more information, seek that guidance, and then determine anything kind of our battle plan from there. Versus us thinking anything that we had to hurry up and everything, shotgun that entire process and everything, and get it to them, the next week. And so I think, like including in there, like what is the level of urgency, on this? Like, does the commission have, the ability to kick this around for a while? Or is it something that we need to, kind of like halt everything that we're working on, focus on this, and have it done, I think, within the week?
Yeah, I think that makes sense. Gretchen, from your point of view, would having a form to fill out, or even just like an email like template to fill out, would that discourage people from contacting the HRC for our input? Like, will this be a barrier for us?
Thank you, because that's actually just what I was thinking about. So I appreciate the question. I think it may. Those are reasonable needs for volunteers, commissioners to have. Those are also questions that can be complicated to answer in some situations. And sometimes electeds may be interested in honestly getting your take on all of the above. Is it urgent? I want to know what you think, because I've appointed you to help me. You tell me what you think. Is it a proc or a res? I want to know what you think. I can imagine situations where somebody would call me and say, I just want to know what they think, and not want to fill out the form. Or, so I think it may, and you'll have to decide, I mean, to a degree, because we kind of serve at the pleasure of council. Like, in those situations, may I bring you what I've got, and say they'd really like to know your opinion on all of those questions. I know Kelsey had her hand up too. I'm sorry. Oh, yeah.
I think yeah, go ahead, Hamadi.
I was going to say it would be in situations where it's going to be particularly heavy. I don't know if a questionnaire, but at least a conversation would be nice. Like, just, shoot, let's have a sit down. Let's see which way we want to go. Like something of that matter. So that way we have a direction on something would be a little bit better. I mean, it's rather than waiting till after and then having the conversation. Like, hey, this is what we were thinking, or this is, I want to get your opinion on this or something like that. I mean, it would be nice to have some form of heads up, just so that way we're not just kind of groping at the dark and trying to figure it out as we're going.
And maybe if I may, maybe you're asking for having like chair and vice chair in that conversations, because certainly, like looking back to the example in April, I had that. I sat down and, tried to ask some questions, tried to understand, and then worked at conveying everything that I heard to all of you, but maybe it's about, I don't know if that's comfortable or not comfortable, or what you might add to that.
I mean,
And
maybe
Go ahead.
maybe we make the form, and then Gretchen, do you always have conversations with the people who are requesting our feedback, even like a phone call?
Yeah.
So what if we just create a questionnaire for Gretchen to use? That way it will help her have the conversation, since it's already happening, and it doesn't add any additional like burden to asking the question technically, because they don't realize they're filling out a form. How do people feel about that?
That'd be a good question.
Joaquin just asked my thoughts on that. I think I'm trying to think of how it would change the thing, because when I think about it, I think I asked all those questions.
Yeah.
And so I don't know that it would have changed anything. But I'm not saying it's not helpful to have. I think it would be good for me to be sure I know all the questions you have. I just don't know if it would have changed anything.
I have a POI, point of information question for you.
Yeah.
What do other boards and commissions do?
Right.
How does city council engage? Because all respect to our electeds, but we didn't even get a request in writing. I mean,
right.
So I'm sure that they don't do that to the planning commission or the historic landmarks commission. I mean, you know what I mean? Things that have more formal procedures. So how do they engage with council, those other boards and commissions?
Great question. I can ask. I'll ask my fellow liaisons.
Okay, I think this is a question we come back to then. I think we should come up with the questions that we want answered, and then in a future meeting hear what other boards, commissions, so on are doing, and try to find a solution that works for us. How does that sound?
Good.
Okay, then if there's no opposition, I'm going to move on to the next question, also just in the interest of time. What scripts can be prepared in advance for the chair and vice chair in complex situations?
I feel like that's totally situational because there's no one size fits all for the majority. I mean, we deal with a lot of emotional things, a lot of things that really hit to the core of what people believe or don't believe, or that, I mean, that, so I feel like if we were trying to standardize something, we would miss like completely. Chelsea.
Go ahead, Kelsey.
What I think this was getting at was like at the beginning of a meeting, do we say this is an overview of the agenda? Public comment will be allowed during the public comment space, where public will be given 3 minutes and like kind of give like that breakdown, to kind of like, this is when it's appropriate to do, and like kind of give them those rules, like address the chair. I think that's kind of what I was picturing with the word script. Because yeah, I don't think we can do like specific ones because things change. But kind of giving that breakdown would be good.
Yeah, agreed. Kira.
Yeah, I think that's exactly what I was thinking as well, was something at the beginning of the meeting. And these are the meetings that would have more structure due to whatever it is, the topic that we're discussing, that we would break down public comment and how to address when you're allowed to have public comment and how long it needs to be. And Gretchen did something very similar to that during the Gaza situation as well. So I think it's just similar to that, but yes.
Yeah, I'm sure the city probably already has some scripts on how they like to phrase things that we can take and steal, like regarding public comment and all that jazz. I do think that we should have a script for just like introductions of committee meetings that include the agenda, public comment, and I feel like there's a third thing that I can't think of right now. And that we should also have something for if we have a contentious topic, we should have like rules of decorum that are also shared, what those are, who's to say. But like, for example, we should be like, hate speech will not be permitted and you will be like cut off if you are deemed to be using hate speech or something like that, to protect ourselves and the public from having to hear things that we shouldn't. I'm not sure what the legality of that is also, so just something that we should consider. Kira, is your hand still up or is this a new hand?
No, I'm just terrible at taking it down. Sorry.
So fair. Do people feel other situations need to be scripted or do not feel that the situations we've described should be scripted? Okay, I'm going to move us on again, just, for time, but we can always come back to it. What process can assist chairs and vice chairs with speaker lists? I think that this will be similar to the script provided, is that that will just be included in the script, is how to handle speaker lists. But we can also just create like a general procedure that like for first order, public comments limited by this amount of time, so on. Kelsey.
I'm thinking that this would be helpful for both our regular and our special meetings. Regular can be way more informal, because we introduce everyone usually. Like, so if you have a comment during a section, like raise your hand and then the chair will put you on the speakers list. This is going to be so much. During like a special meeting, this is what I was picturing. We have laminated like just pieces of paper. Well, hopefully we'll have like public comment, like they can sign in, but whatever. We have laminated pieces of paper and people can put like on expo markers, like their name. So then if they want to speak, they raise their placard. And then the chair can be like, okay, go, great. So then they can write them down on a speakers list. I think speakers lists are very helpful. So I think that's what I think.
I like the idea. So I do think that for public comment for special meetings, that it should be required registration. And we will just gauge on if we are requiring it at the beginning of the meeting when we see how many people have registered. I like the idea of the laminated placards, but I'm also concerned that people will damage them, will write obscene things on them, like giving people free range to write and wave things around could just cause problems. But I don't see another answer on how to make a speakers list of not registered people.
Kelsey, what is your intention? Is it what Ilana just said, that folks who don't register can speak? Is that what's the intention with the plaque, with the hand thing?
To add to a speakers list. So in my experience, when I've chaired meetings in the past, people will like raise their placard to get added to the speakers list. And then, so like if they have a comment, they don't have to wait until there's an opening to like get added. So they just raise their placard and then the chair will write it down. And once they get to that person, then they'll be like, all right, Joaquin, you're next on the speakers list.
Thoughts, Kelsey, on for special meetings, if you're not signed up for the start of the meeting, you're just not getting an opportunity to speak?
I think what we did during the third Gaza meeting was if you would like to give a public comment, like please fill out, like write your name here before, and And then if there's time, we open it up, because I think it's important, because things are said that might spark something, or someone might be like getting up the courage. So I think best case scenario, everyone signs up if they want to speak. But I do think that it shouldn't be a requirement.
Gretchen, question for you. Does the city have any like iPads or laptops that's just like free range to be used as needed?
Not that I'm aware of, but I will ask.
Because something I'm thinking, I was originally going to say we could have like a QR code where people can scan it and like add themselves, like register in the moment. But that adds a like an accessibility issue for people who might not have a smartphone. And so then like an iPad that they can just like go up and type their information in, like that would be a solution. To give people still an opportunity to register without like pre-registering. And it'd still be like a formal process. So I think we come back to this one as we go through figuring out the detailed procedures of special meetings. And if you could find an answer about if there's any rentable technology, that'd be great.
Will do.
Thank you. Okay, number 8, when do we want to reopen public comment versus limited only to designated planned public comment periods? I will just share my opinion, which is during a special meeting, we should not reopen public comment ever. Yeah, Kira.
I would also agree with that, only because when we are talking about contentious things, it gives people the opportunity to turn it into an argument, rather than just, say your public comment and let that be. Because I noticed that in the Gaza situation is that it gave people the opportunity to re-sign up and to respond to someone else's public comment, when really that's not the point.
Yeah, it does open situations for like a rebuttal, and that's not what we want. Does anyone feel strongly that we should have situations where we reopen public comment? Yeah, Robert.
I guess my question is, if we're agreeing in rule 9, like question number 8, not to reopen public comment after the time's closed, then why do we need name placards or QR codes for a speaker list for people to be added after the public comment period is already closed? Like we're going to say public comments addressed at the beginning of the meeting, and that's your time to say your piece. Then why would we need rules for raising your hand and commenting in the middle of public comments already closed?
My understanding was that process would be for before public comment has happened, or like in the midst of it, but it hasn't closed yet. It's not for once it's been closed. That wouldn't do anything. You wouldn't have an opportunity to speak.
I wonder, and I don't really have a strong opinion about this, I wonder if Kira's rebuttal concerns apply to that as well. So I'm wondering, like, if people are volunteering to speak again, it's to say, Robert, that's not what I said, and you're a liar. And not that I don't think Robert's a liar, but but that and things got really heated multiple times, and a lot of them centered around this rebuttal thing that Kira's talking about. So I'm wondering if maybe the other thing should be amended to say, well, if you haven't spoken at all yet, and you work up the courage, and I think that's a real thing, Kelsey, or people don't feel comfortable speaking, they either grow in their comfort, or they, someone says something and they go, oh, I want to say that too, or I want to echo that, or I want to add on to that. That's very real, and I would love to hear from people like that. Well, I want to hear from everybody, but if you didn't feel comfortable signing up in advance and you feel moved to speak and you haven't, I want to hear from you. So I wonder if that's a middle, let's see, compromise.
Yeah.
Joaquin, are you kind of saying like an order, like people who signed up, people who haven't spoken, like kind of
maybe I wasn't getting as granular as that. I guess as a general comment, I would say, Kelsey, that I want to hear from people who haven't spoken. I want everyone to speak who wants to speak. And when that is done, I want to hear from folks who haven't spoken yet. And
Yeah.
to me, everything is extra beyond that, and not obligatory.
Okay, yes, I agree.
Yeah, and I do think that no person should talk multiple, like public comment, you get your whatever minutes we decide is appropriate, and then you don't get more. So I don't think there'd be a situation where someone's like registering a second time, we would just skip over them, acknowledging that they'd already had their time in order to be fair to everyone. Like it's not a thing. Anywho, so we are at 6 p.m. And so I would like to propose that we come back to these questions in the next meeting. I also think it'd be great to start drafting some of the procedures and policies that we have agreed to, just so that way people have a visual of what that is. I'm happy to take a first stab at just some of the most general ones. And bring that to the next meeting. I'd also welcome a teammate if they want to help with that. Kelsey, go for it.
Gretchen, would it be possible for you to email us kind of like drafts we're needing to draft?
Yeah.
And then
That's the drafts we need to draft.
and I hope this doesn't become like a public meeting space, but like can we, or maybe I know what to do. Put it in like a Google Doc, share it with us, and then we can put our name next to the item we're interested in drafting. Does that sound legal?
Like a sign-up sheet.
Yes.
It does if it goes to everybody and remains a sign-up sheet. My understanding is if it becomes a discussion, it should not be quorum. So the two of you can work on it in advance, but if it goes to all six.
So no drafting in the document, but just signing up.
Signing up is okay for all six. Drafting in the document is okay for two.
Okay. Perfect.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Gretchen, can you make a Google Doc that has all of the policies and procedures we have agreed to outline, and then just a space next to that for people to volunteer to draft that rule? And our next meeting, we're meeting bi-weekly. So yeah. I am going to agree to draft a couple just so that I can have that visual ready for us by our next meeting. I don't want to put that pressure on anyone else. I just want to make sure that we have a shared understanding of what we're moving towards. So if you see my name next to a topic, expect a draft maybe. Okay, anywho.
Thank you, Ilana.
Any last member remarks, announcements before we end our lovely meeting? No? Okay, perfect. Well then, I call this meeting to an end at 6:02 p.m.